I saw her differently last night, and I can't go back. It wasn't dramatic. There was no sudden confession, no life-altering event, no moment that would look cinematic if someone replayed it later. It was quiet, and that's exactly why I can't undo it. Last night, something shifted. Not in her, in me. I've known her long enough to understand her rhythm, the way she listens before she speaks, the way she chooses her words carefully when something matters, the way she goes still when she's thinking deeply instead of filling silence with noise. None of that was new. What was new was how I saw it. I didn't see charm, I didn't see beauty, I didn't see attraction, I saw depth. And once you see depth clearly, you can't pretend it surfaced again. It happened in a small moment. One of those unremarkable exchanges most people would overlook. The kind that would dissolve into the night without leaving a trace. But it didn't dissolve for me. It anchored. She was talking about something simple. Not heavy. Not emotional. Just honest. And while she spoke, there was no performance. No attempt to impress. No angle. Just presence. And I realized I wasn't watching her. I was witnessing her. There's a difference. Watching is observational. Witnessing is participatory. When you witness someone, you recognize something real happening in front of you. You see their internal world move slightly, and you're aware that it's sacred in some quiet way. That's what changed. I'd always appreciated her, but last night, appreciation turned into recognition. Recognition of who she is when she isn't trying to be anything. Recognition of how steady she is. Recognition of how rare that steadiness actually is. I saw how she holds space for people without making it about herself. How she doesn't rush to fill gaps. How she doesn't need attention to feel present. How she doesn't dramatize her own importance. That kind of character is subtle. You miss it if you're distracted. Last night I wasn't distracted, and once I saw it clearly, something irreversible happened. I stopped seeing her as someone I'm getting to know. I started seeing her as someone I could build with. That thought didn't scare me at first. It settled, and then it scared me. Because once you see someone as potential foundation instead of possibility, everything changes. The stakes shift, the weight shifts, your posture shifts. You stop hovering, you start standing. I realized that up until that moment, I'd been holding a small part of myself back. Not consciously, but protectively. There was always a quiet exit available, a mental door I could walk through if things became complicated. Last night, that door felt further away, not because it disappeared, because I didn't want to use it. That's what I can't go back from. Not the feeling, the perspective. Perspective changes everything. Before, I saw her as someone meaningful in my present. Now, I see her as someone who could exist in my future. And that kind of seeing rewires you. I replayed the night in my head afterward, not obsessively, carefully, trying to pinpoint exactly what shifted. It wasn't what she said. It wasn't how she looked. It was how consistent she felt. Consistency is attractive in a way. Intensity never is. Intensity burns. Consistency builds. I saw how calm she remained even when the conversation deepened. How she didn't flinch at vulnerability. How she didn't rush to lighten the mood when something real surfaced. She didn't perform empathy, she embodied it. That's rare. And once you recognize rare, ordinary stops being enough. I realized something else too. The way she looked at me wasn't evaluative. It wasn't searching for flaws. It wasn't measuring. It was steady. Steady eye contact changes you because it says, I'm here, fully. Last night, I met that steadiness without flinching. And that's new for me. Usually, when someone looks too closely, I instinctively shift, I deflect. I soften the moment. I create distance without meaning to. I didn't do that. I stayed. Staying felt natural, and that terrified me more than anything else. Because if staying feels natural, leaving feels artificial. I can't go back to seeing her casually. I can't go back to interpreting our moments lightly. I can't go back to pretending this is undefined just because definition feels risky. Something in me crossed a threshold, quietly, without announcement. And thresholds don't reverse. You can step forward, you can step back, but you always know you crossed. I also noticed how my thoughts shifted afterward, not toward fantasy, toward alignment. I started asking different questions. Not do I like her, but Am I ready to meet what this could become? That's a heavier question because it doesn't ask about feeling, it asks about readiness. Readiness requires integrity, it requires consistency, it requires showing up in a way that honors what you see. Seeing her differently means I can't treat her the same. Not because she changed, because I did. And change, once acknowledged, demands adjustment. I don't know what comes next. I don't know how she sees me. I don't know whether this perspective is shared or one-sided. But I know this. Last night removed the option of pretending. I can't minimize what I saw. I can't shrink what I felt. I can't downgrade the significance just to feel safer. When you see someone as capable of being part of your future, you start behaving differently in the present. You speak more intentionally, you listen more carefully, you show up more fully. That shift has already begun, and I can feel it. There's no drama in it, no urgency, no pressure, just clarity. And clarity changes posture. I'm not chasing, I'm not rushing, I'm not declaring anything prematurely, but I am aware that something moved inside me, aware that the way I see her now carries weight, aware that whatever happens next will happen from this new perspective. I saw her differently last night. Not more intensely, more accurately. And once you see someone accurately, in their depth, in their steadiness, in their quiet strength, you don't get to go back to surface. That's what changed. Not her, me. The shift I didn't expect, and why it won't let me rest. I thought I understood her before, last night. I thought I had her mapped out in the quiet, comfortable way you map someone when you're still keeping a little distance. You notice the good traits. You admire certain things. You stay open, but you don't attach meaning too quickly. That's how I've always operated. Careful, observant, measured. But last night wasn't about learning something new. It was about realizing something true. And realization changes the weight of everything. There is a moment, subtle, almost invisible, where I felt the shift land inside me. Not a rush, not adrenaline, just a slow internal settling, like something clicking into alignment. I stopped looking at her as someone I enjoy being around. I started seeing her as someone I don't want to lose. That difference sounds small. It isn't. Enjoyment is light, it floats, it's optional. Not wanting to lose someone has gravity. It anchors, it rearranges priorities quietly. After that realization, everything she did carried more meaning. Not exaggerated meaning. Not fantasy. Just weight. When she laughed, it didn't feel like charm. It felt like something I wanted to protect. When she spoke thoughtfully, it didn't feel impressive. It felt grounding. When she paused before answering something deeper, it didn't feel cautious. It felt intentional. And intention is powerful. I realized I wasn't reacting to her personality, I was responding to her consistency. Consistency is what makes someone safe to build with. Not intensity, not mystery, consistency. She doesn't shift based on attention. She doesn't perform depending on the room. She doesn't inflate herself when she feels seen. She just remains steady. And last night, I saw that steadiness clearly for the first time. It unsettled me. Not because I didn't like what I saw, because I did. And liking it meant admitting something bigger. I spent years convincing myself that I'm fine alone, capable alone, self-sufficient, independent. And I am. But independence can become a shield when you're not careful. A shield against needing anyone. A shield against building something that could outgrow you. Last night, that shield cracked, not shattered. Cracked. I noticed how my body reacted differently around her. I wasn't guarded, I wasn't scanning, I wasn't subtly bracing for imbalance, I was relaxed. And relaxed presence is dangerous when you're not prepared for what it implies. Because relaxation signals trust. And trust signals investment. I didn't plan to invest. That's the truth. I plan to explore. To stay open. To see where things go without anchoring myself prematurely. But anchors don't always ask permission. Sometimes they drop quietly when you realize someone feels like home in ways you didn't anticipate. I saw her differently last night because I stopped viewing her through possibility and started viewing her through potential permanence. And permanence is terrifying when you're used to mobility. Mobility means you can leave without much friction. Permanence means you have to think about what leaving would cost. I found myself thinking differently after I got home, not dreaming. Not fantasizing, assessing. Could I handle what this would require? Could I remain consistent the way she is? Could I offer steadiness instead of intensity? Could I be someone she feels safe building with? Those questions didn't feel romantic. They felt responsible. That's when I understood that my perspective shift wasn't about emotion. It was about maturity. Seeing her differently didn't make me more attached. It made me more aware. Aware of what I'd risk if I minimized this. Aware of what I'd lose if I treated this casually. Aware that some people aren't meant to be approached lightly. She's not intense. She's not overwhelming. She's not chaotic. She's composed. And that composure holds depth. Depth without chaos is rare. And once you experience it, intensity starts to feel immature. I also noticed how differently I thought about time. Before last night, time felt flexible. If it didn't work out, it didn't work out. If it drifted, it drifted. Now, time feels intentional, not rushed, intentional. Every interaction feels like something I want to handle carefully, not carefully as in fragile, carefully as in meaningful. I can't go back to treating her like an experiment. I can't go back to staying emotionally half invested. I can't go back to assuming there's always another exit waiting. Because I don't want another exit. That's the truth I've been circling around. I don't want to lose her because I was afraid to take this seriously. I don't want to look back and realize I stayed detached when depth was available. I don't want to default to independence if connection is possible. Last night didn't make me desperate. It made me deliberate. Deliberate in how I speak. Deliberate in how I show up. Deliberate in how I show up. Deliberate in how I allow things to unfold. I'm not planning declarations. I'm not forcing clarity. I'm not pushing for definitions, but I am changing internally. And internal change always precedes external shifts. I can feel my posture adjusting, less defensive, more grounded, more aligned with the idea that this might actually matter long term. And that's the part I can't undo. Once you consider someone long term in your mind, the casual layer dissolves. You start thinking in alignment. You start filtering decisions differently. You start protecting the connection instead of protecting yourself from it. That's new for me. I've always protected myself first. Now I'm protecting something shared. Not because I'm certain, because I'm uncertain, because I'm aware. Awareness doesn't guarantee outcome. It guarantees responsibility. I saw her differently last night, and because of that, I have to show up differently now. Not louder, not more intense, just more intentional, and intention carries weight. I don't know what she felt last night. I don't know if she sensed the shift in me. I don't know if she sees me differently too. But I know this. I crossed a quiet line internally. And crossing lines changes how you stand. I'm not standing on possibility anymore. I'm standing on meaning. And meaning doesn't let you go back to surface level thinking. It doesn't let you pretend something is light when it's heavy. It doesn't let you stay half present when full presence is required. Last night, I stopped seeing her as someone I might care about. I started seeing her as someone I already do. And once that truth lands, there's no return to before. There's only forward. The weight of knowing and the cost of pretending you don't. There's something heavier than falling in love. It's realizing you already have and pretending you haven't. That's the space I've been sitting in since last night. After I saw her differently, I tried to move through today like nothing had shifted. I told myself it was just perspective. Just a passing clarity. Just a moment of heightened awareness that would settle back into normal. It didn't. If anything, the awareness sharpened. I felt it in small places. In how my thoughts returned to her without effort. In how I replayed the way she listened, not what she said. And how I felt protective over something that wasn't even defined. That's when I understood something I couldn't soften. I don't just admire her. I value her. And value changes behavior. Admiration is optional. Value is intentional. When you value someone, you move differently around them. You become more precise with your words. You pay attention to how your actions land. You don't take moments lightly. I've always believed I was careful. But careful and invested are not the same. Careful keeps you safe. Invested makes you responsible. The weight of knowing I'm invested is what I can't undo. Because investment means I no longer have the luxury of indifference. I can't play it cool. I can't downplay what's real. I can't act like this is interchangeable. She's not interchangeable. And that realization carries weight. I caught myself today imagining something I used to avoid. Not fantasy. Stability. I imagine what it would feel like to consistently build something instead of testing something. To stop evaluating every moment for compatibility and instead participate in it fully. To let connection deepen without needing to supervise it. That kind of imagining scared me. Because imagining stability means admitting desire, and desire is vulnerable. I've spent years pretending I don't need much, pretending that independence is enough, pretending that detachment is strength. But last night exposed something I can't deny. I don't want to be detached from her. I want to be aligned with her. Alignment is different than attraction. Attraction pulls. Alignment steadies. What I felt last night wasn't the pull, it was a grounding. And grounding is harder to dismiss. I realized something else today. The fear I feel isn't about losing her. It's about mismanaging something that matters. That's new for me. Usually my fear is self-centered. Fear of getting hurt. Fear of losing control. Fear of being exposed. This time my fear is relational. Fear of not showing up correctly. Fear of minimizing something that deserves weight. Fear of treating her casually when she's anything but. That shift in fear tells me how deep this actually goes. When you care about the integrity of your presence more than the protection of your ego, you've crossed a line. I've crossed it. Quietly, internally, but permanently. I don't know if she sees me differently yet. I don't know if she felt the same shift. I don't know if we're standing at the same emotional depth. But I know I can't pretend I'm still at the surface. Pretending would mean dialing myself down. It would mean acting as if this is exploratory when it's already meaningful. It would mean speaking in lighter tones when I feel weight. And that kind of pretending creates dissonance. I've lived in that dissonance before. It feels like half-truths and quiet regrets. I don't want to live there again. The weight of knowing is heavier than uncertainty, because uncertainty leaves room for retreat. Knowing removes it. I know she matters. I know I don't want to lose her because I stayed emotionally cautious. I know that if this fades, I want it to fade, honestly, not because I withheld myself. That's the cost of clarity. You become accountable for how you move next. Accountability doesn't mean rushing into declarations. It means living in alignment with what you feel. Alignment looks like this. I don't downplay my interest. I don't create artificial distance. I don't keep exits open just to feel secure. I show up consistently. I speak honestly. I stay present. None of that is dramatic, but it's significant. I used to believe that love announced itself loudly, through urgency, through intensity, through overwhelming emotion. This isn't loud, it's steady. And steady is harder to ignore. Steady feelings don't spike and disappear. They settle, they root, they influence how you think about tomorrow. I caught myself thinking about tomorrow differently, not wondering if she'll still be there, assuming she will be, and asking how I want to show up inside that assumption. That shift alone tells me I'm deeper than I planned. I didn't plan to see you this way. I didn't plan to feel responsible for something undefined. I didn't plan to care about consistency this much. But planning doesn't control reality. Awareness does. And awareness has changed me. I'm more attentive now, more deliberate, less reactive. I'm not trying to impress her, I'm trying to be worthy of what I see in her. That's the part that surprises me most. This isn't about winning her. It's about aligning myself. When you see someone as long-term potential, you start measuring yourself against a different standard. Not perfection, consistency, integrity, emotional maturity. I want to meet her there, not from fear, from intention. The weight of knowing is real. It's heavier than uncertainty, but it's also cleaner. Because now I'm not guessing how I feel. I'm not rationalizing it, I'm not minimizing it, I'm acknowledging it. And once you acknowledge something that's real, there's no going back to casual. I saw her differently, and that sight changed my internal landscape. I can't unsee the steadiness. I can't unfeel the grounding. I can't undo the shift in perspective, so now I move forward differently. Not rushed, not pressured, but aligned. Whatever happens next will happen with full awareness, not half investment, not guarded curiosity, full presence. And that's the part I can't return from. Because once you've seen someone as foundational, you can't go back to seeing them as temporary. That line has been crossed. Quietly. Irreversibly. The responsibility that comes with seeing her clearly. There's something people don't talk about when they describe falling in love. They talk about emotion, they talk about chemistry, they talk about excitement. They don't talk about responsibility, but that's what settled in me after I saw her differently. Responsibility. Not responsibility in a heavy, suffocating sense, not obligation, not pressure, but the kind that comes when you realize someone is no longer just a possibility, they're a priority. I woke up the next morning aware that something in me had shifted permanently. I didn't feel dramatic, I didn't feel impulsive, I felt grounded. And grounding can be terrifying when you weren't planning to anchor anywhere. When you see someone clearly, truly clearly, You inherit the responsibility of how you handle that vision. You can't pretend you didn't notice. You can't treat them casually without betraying your own clarity. You can't stay half invested without feeling the internal fracture. That's the weight I've been carrying. The weight of knowing that how I move now matters more than it did before. Before last night, I had space to be experimental. Space is daylight, space to protect myself with ambiguity. Now, ambiguity feels dishonest. Not because she's demanding clarity, because I am. Seeing her clearly, it means I can't hide behind timing. I can't say, let's just see what happens, when I already know I care about what happens. I can't act neutral when neutrality would distort truth. Truth doesn't require urgency, but it does require agency, but it does require integrity. Neutrality means I don't flirt with distance. I don't create space to feel powerful. I don't hold back just to maintain leverage. I show up the same way whether I'm certain or uncertain. Steady, present, intentional. And that's new for me, because I used to rely on subtle power dynamics to feel secure. If I cared less, I felt safer. If I held back, I felt in control. If I stayed slightly detached, I couldn't be disappointed. Now I care. Fully. Not desperately, but deliberately. And deliberate care requires maturity. I noticed how my internal dialogue shifted. It's no longer about whether she likes me enough. It's about whether I'm honoring what I feel properly. That's a completely different posture. When your concern shifts from ego to integrity, you've grown. And growth changes how you love. I'm not thinking about winning her. I'm thinking about being worthy of the steadiness I saw in her. She doesn't waver. She doesn't dramatize. She doesn't chase validation. She's grounded. If I'm going to step towards her in any meaningful way, I have to meet that grounding with my own. That means consistency. That means patience. That means not oscillating between intensity and withdrawal. Oscillation is easy. Consistency is earned. I also realized that seeing her clearly removed one of my favorite defenses. The, if it doesn't work out, I'll be fine narrative. Of course I'll be fine. But fine isn't the goal anymore. Meaning is. When something has meaning, you don't treat it like practice. You treat it like investment. Investment doesn't guarantee return, but it demands sincerity. I've started paying attention to how my words land. Not to overanalyze, but to ensure alignment. I don't want to promise subtly and disappear later. I don't want to imply depth and then retreat. If I move forward, I move honestly. If I pause transparently. If I stay fully. Half measures don't belong here. There's also something else that changed. I stopped fantasizing about what this could be and started focusing on who I need to be inside it. That's the difference between infatuation and intention. Infatuation imagines outcomes. Intention shapes character. I don't want this to be dramatic. I want it to be stable. I don't want fireworks. I want foundation. And foundation requires responsibility. Responsibility to communicate clearly. Responsibility to not project fears onto her. Responsibility to remain grounded even when emotions fluctuate. Seeing her differently forced me to see myself differently too. I'm no longer someone exploring casually. I'm someone evaluating seriously. That seriousness doesn't mean pressure. It means respect. Respect for her time. Respect for my own growth. Respect for what we're building. Even if it's still undefined. I don't know if she felt the shift I did. Maybe she did. Maybe she did. Maybe she did. But regardless of her awareness, mine has changed my trajectory. I can't approach her with playful detachment anymore. I can't treat moments like temporary experiments. I can't allow inconsistency to be excused as spontaneity. Spontaneity is beautiful, but reliability builds trust. And trust is what I saw in her eyes. Trust that she shows up as herself. Trust that she doesn't manipulate dynamics. Trust that she doesn't need to control outcomes to feel secure. If I'm going to be someone she can lean into, I have to embody that same trustworthiness. That's the responsibility I inherited when I saw her clearly. Not pressure to define things immediately. Not pressure to escalate. Pressure to be consistent. Consistency in energy. Consistency in tone. Consistency in intention. I don't want to look back and realize I mishandled something rare because I was afraid of depth. I don't want to sabotage steadiness with unpredictability. I don't want to protect my ego at the expense of something meaningful. That awareness has sharpened me. I'm not moving faster. I'm moving cleaner. Cleaner means no mixed signals, no strategic withdrawal, no silent tests, just presence. and intention. I saw it differently. And in doing so, I stepped into a different version of myself, one that doesn't hide behind ambiguity, one that doesn't chase intensity to avoid stability, one that understands that love isn't about feeling overwhelmed. It's about feeling aligned. Alignment is quiet, but powerful. And once you step into alignment, there's no returning to emotional improvisation. You move with purpose. I don't know what comes next, but I know how I'll meet it with steadiness, with respect, with responsibility. Because once you see someone as foundational, you don't approach them casually again. You approach them intentionally. And that's the line I've crossed. There's no going back to surface, only forward with integrity. Why I'm not afraid of what this could become anymore. There's a strange calm that comes after you accept responsibility for something meaningful. Not excitement. Not certainty. Calm. That's where I am now. When I first realized I saw her differently, fear was the loudest emotion in the room. Fear of depth, fear of permanence, fear of losing control, fear of caring more than I planned. But fear doesn't stay loud forever. If you don't run from it, it evolves. And mine did. It turned into clarity. Clarity isn't dramatic. It doesn't make your heart race. It doesn't sweep you off your feet. It steadies you. It makes you move with intention instead of impulse. It replaces panic with posture. I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to admit before. I'm not afraid of loving her. I'm afraid of mishandling something rare. That's different. Loving someone deeply isn't what scares me anymore. It's the possibility of treating something meaningful like it's temporary because I'm afraid of its weight. That's what I won't do. I've stopped asking whether this is too much or too soon. Those questions come from insecurity. Now I ask something simpler. Am I being honest with how I feel? If the answer is yes, then the timing doesn't matter as much. I used to believe that the smartest way to love was cautiously, slowly, with emotional buffers. But caution can quietly become detachment, and detachment can become regret. I don't want regret. I don't want to look back at this chapter and realize I held myself at half volume because I was scared of what full volume might sound like. Seeing her differently changed my emotional threshold. It raised it. I don't flinch at the thought of long-term anymore. I don't instinctively look for escape routes. I don't measure how much I'm giving versus how much I'm receiving. Those calculations feel immature now. When something is aligned, you don't need to count. You just participate. I've noticed how much steadier I feel in conversations. Not trying to impress, not trying to maintain intrigue, not trying to appear less invested than I am. Just present. Presence is underrated. It doesn't sparkle. It anchors. And anchors don't panic when the tide shifts. They hold. That's how I feel now. Not anchored to her in a way that feels possessive. Anchored in myself in a way that feels intentional. Intentional love is different than reactive love. Reactive love responds to excitement. Intentional love responds to alignment. Alignment is what I saw last night. And alignment doesn't fade when the night ends. It lingers in how you speak the next day, and how you listen, and how you think about someone when they're not in the room. I don't feel consumed. I feel aware that this could grow into something real. Aware that it deserves consistency. Aware that I'm capable of showing up fully. That last one matters most. For a long time, I wasn't sure I could. Not because I didn't care, because I was used to keeping exits open. Now I don't feel the need for exits. If something ends, it ends. But I won't pre-plan the ending just to feel safe. I've accepted that loving deeply comes with risk. But so does staying guarded. The difference is what you gain in the process. Guarded love protects you. Deep love transforms you. I choose transformation, not recklessly, not blindly. Consciously. I also realized something important. Seeing her differently doesn't mean rushing her. It doesn't mean demanding clarity. It doesn't mean forcing progress. It means showing up in a way that reflects what I've seen. Stable, attentive, grounded. It means not sending mixed signals, not disappearing when vulnerability surfaces, not pulling back when things go real. Real doesn't need drama, it needs steadiness, and I'm ready to be steady. That's the shift. I'm not afraid of what this could become anymore. I'm prepared for it, prepared to communicate honestly, prepared to remain consistent, prepared to let this unfold naturally, without sabotaging it out of fear. I used to think love was about intensity, about the rush, about being overwhelmed. Now I understand it's about integration, about how seamlessly someone fits into your internal world without chaos. She fits, not loudly, naturally. And when something fits naturally, you don't question it constantly, you build around it. I'm not fantasizing about forever. I'm not planning timelines. I'm not projecting outcomes. I'm simply allowing this to be real, without shrinking, without exaggerating, without guarding. If this becomes something lasting, I'll meet it fully. If it doesn't, I'll walk away knowing I showed up honestly. That's what matters to me now. Not the guarantee, the integrity. I saw her differently. And in doing so, I saw myself differently too. More capable, more grounded, more ready than I thought I was. I can't go back to seeing her casually. But I don't want to. Because what I see now isn't overwhelming. It's promising. And for the first time in a long time, promise doesn't scare me. It steadies me. Whatever this becomes, I won't meet it with hesitation. I'll meet it with presence. That's the only way I know how to love now. Fully, intentionally, without hiding and without fear.
The fear I feel isn't about losing her. It's about mismanaging something that matters. That's new for me. Usually my fear is self-centered. Fear of getting hurt, fear of losing control, fear of being exposed.